You're like, wait. Okay.
We usually don't. Do we introduce?
We're doing
ourselves?
introductions
Oh,
because
okay.
there's 4 voices and there's a new voice.
Luke. Yes.
I'm Mark. Do you just want the name?
But hey, whatever you want to give out, whatever information you want in the world.
If you could give your social security, helpful.
Oh, two.
It starts with O.
I shouldn't have said that. I said it.
Made me choke. We were just talking about the wrong pipe and how it just means there's water in my lungs now.
Yeah. Wrong pipe is
Partially drowning.
And the last voice is Jamin.
Oh, so, hey guys, I'm Jamin.
And this is a special episode talking about the Votary Collective, which
Wow, what's that?
you've all been a part of. And Mark is currently a part of.
That's right.
Votary Collective is our talented pool of filmmakers, specially vetted, that we work with on a regular basis. A pool of freelancers, if you will. Did you get that info about the
Yeah. There's
pirate?
an article I can.
I can't talk
some
because there's
point.
literally
It's kind of long.
water in my
Literally
lungs.
water in your
I think-
lungs.
Literally.
Anyways, we can-
No, I'm interested. I'm not saying read it all. I was just curious about
Yeah, I'm
what
trying to-
what the movie is where someone did a pirate voice, or did the Scottish voice for the pirate. Because he just did a Scottish accent, and I was like, oh, that's a pirate. That's like a pirate voice.
Yeah, you sound like a pirate. And he's like, whoa.
That's so weird. I never realized this.
It
doesn't say.
Long John Silver.
Long John Silver is the name of the movie.
Love that restaurant.
So I think maybe Treasure
I
Island,
want some fish.
like
fish
the
sticks.
early
Yeah,
Treasure
yeah.
Oh,
Island.
like a black and white Treasure Island.
Yeah,
That's cool.
The adventures. Okay, so so some of the like old Disney pirate films, I think,
Mm.
when they portrayed pirates, they had Scottish accents,
Yeah.
That's true.
even though pirates are from all over.
Yeah, and most likely don't sound Scottish,
Yeah,
like in any way.
yeah.
I wonder what they really sounded like.
Let's get down to this.
Let's talk about pirates though for an hour. Mark,
Yes.
when did you know you wanted to be a filmmaker, or hold a camera, or any of that?
I mean, I knew I wanted to tell stories since early childhood, probably since, I watched movies as a kid. I didn't know exactly if I wanted to be a filmmaker or if I wanted to make comic books, graphic novels, or video games, TV shows, what have you. I knew I was a visual storyteller, and I just knew that like really early on.
How did you know that? Were you drawing and stuff, or like?
Yeah, drawing. I used to be like really good. I've kind of recently stopped. I don't know why. I've been wanting to get back into it, but I was always drawing like every day, just like, creating characters, my own little worlds. And no, for some reason, I would just watch like movies or things on TV and would just want to replicate it somehow. I don't know why. It was just in my nature. I just like to create, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's why I gravitated toward like, well, everyone was playing like, like in terms of video games, like they would play like, I don't know, the sports games or Call of Duty. I was like into The Sims or like, that sort of thing. Cause I just, I loved building stuff. I always have. And yeah, so I figured that out at an early age. But as far as filmmaking goes, where I was certain that I wanted to do that, it probably came around high school. Cause I went to film school. And, I was pretty certain at that point I was going to be involved in the industry somehow. But even then, up until I would say the pandemic was, I just didn't know exactly where in the industry I wanted to go. It was like a big, I was still trying to figure that out. Even at the time when I first encountered Votary back in 2019, which I'm sure we'll be talking about that too. I still didn't know exactly where I wanted to go in the business, but now it's more or less, like I said, since the pandemic, I just, I don't know, I guess I'm selfish and I love telling my own stories, and I don't like working with, I don't want to work up a sort of pyramid, so to speak. I just kind of like doing my own thing. I mean, I'll help others out, other filmmakers, or I would appreciate, help from them sometimes too, maybe. But it's always just been in my nature, I guess, to do things myself, for myself, by myself, of myself, I guess.
Well, what do you mean by your stories?
Just like
Your own stories, like.
I mean, I don't necessarily mean like my own stories in that like they're my own life, my own experience, but just like things that I personally find interesting.
Sure, yeah.
And those can be a variety of things, but usually they're stories that involve extreme life experiences. Even though I haven't really lived an extreme life, I've always gravitated toward like the action kind of stuff, just like, mobsters or like, certain war movies or, people with tattoos, bikers. I've just always thought that was so cool. And it was a really cool, for one thing, it's a cool life to live, but another to tell those stories,
Have you ever been disappointed wanting to tell a story of someone who's just heavily tattooed and then you realize they're very not extreme? they're like a barista.
Well,
they just look like a biker gang.
I mean, I guess you could say the same about me, because like those are the kind of stories I want to tell. And you would think, someone recently told me that like how you look, how you portray yourself is very different from the person you are. And I guess, I don't do it by design, but I guess because, you can see me right here. I'm wearing leather and I have rings and stuff. You'd think some people may think I'm an extreme kind of dude, but
extremely Italian.
Yes, very true. But I don't know, I'm a goofball. I just like to have fun. And, I think in that way, I'm a disappointment.
If somebody, I guess, is assuming you're going to be like some, like, I don't know, mean tough guy or something in that sense, is that what you mean?
Yeah, because like some people, like there's...
Or, surprisingly refreshing, because, you could be kind of intimidated by someone who's like that tough guy persona and be like, oh,
yeah,
it's a sweetheart.
Yeah, exactly.
But also, you do have the desire at least to, be around action and high excitement scenarios. So
yeah,
it's not like so distant from who you really are,
Yeah, that's true.
I think it has to do a little bit with like people putting some sort of assumption on you, or like, if you look like this, then you must be that type of person, which is sometimes you can't help it. It just happens. But
that's very true. Yeah. There's, I think, you don't want to judge a book by its cover. You can't like go off of just how people look or what their interests are, what makes them a person. You've got to dig deep, I guess. And you got to spend time with that person to really figure out like how this person is, because it can be very different from how they look as opposed to how they are in person.
Yeah. So what happened was it during the pandemic or after that you were like, oh man, this is sort of my niche, so to speak, within filmmaking and storytelling?
Yeah, before the pandemic, I kind of had to go through like rock bottom in hell to really understand myself and appreciate myself and achieve self-awareness. 'Cause I think a lot of us we're not really, especially young people. I slammed the table. I think a lot of young people aren't really truly self-aware, let alone just people in general. But I had to really go through all that to understand kind of like what my purpose is on this earth and what I truly want out of it. Before that, I was just kind of listening to what the world was telling me I should be. Like, nothing wrong with getting a full-time regular job if that's what you want. But, the world tells you, like, you need to do those things. You need to have a safe life, with steady income and, show up, you do your 9 to 5, whatever, and you be a good person, you be compliant. And I tried really hard to make people in my life happy by doing those things. But I just felt empty. I felt like there was something missing. I wanted something more. I was pretty depressed. And, when I sat down by myself alone during like quarantine, I was just kind of like, okay, well, after I had just gone through a bad breakup, lost my dog, lost my gig, like 3 things like that. I was just kind of like, all right, what do I want out of life? Because depending on how bad this virus is, I don't know. At the time, we didn't know like necessarily the severity of it. I could be like, I could die this
Yeah.
year, so I might as well live life doing something I truly love.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, all I know really is visual storytelling. I mean, there's other things in life that I'm interested in, but this is something that, you know, I've always identified with. I've always like known it's what's made me happy, what's made me fulfilled, and also what I'm good at and what I know. So that's more or less where I started that, where I had that sort of realization, to answer your question.
Nice.
Yeah. Thank you.
And the cool thing about storytelling too is that it crosses the boundaries of interests. So you can have interest in lots of different areas, but if you're a storyteller, you kind of get to get a view and a window into other people's lives and their interests and passions.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. How do you guys, I don't know if I really got like your stories, if you had like moments in your lives where you were kind of like, this is what I want to do, is tell stories. Like, do you guys have moments like that?
Yeah, well, I kind of relate to what you were saying in an interesting way because, well, I mean, Jamin just sort of interviewed me the other day with my Y story. Stay tuned for
Coming soon.
coming
Shameless plug.
soon. Votary Y stories. But yeah, I kind of had a little bit of interesting pandemic moment. Like similar. I don't feel like I necessarily was at rock bottom, but I was at a low point and was like, well, what, you know, do I really want to do this for a living, or do I like what really drives me? And like, you know, not just with like working here or anything, just like in general, like what, like, you know, I felt like I was like, I need like an extreme change, but I don't want to be like impulsive. But I started to realize like all the things that have like felt like distraction from one another, like interest in music or drawing and visual art and filmmaking and just like obsessing over like behind the scenes of movies and then writing a screenplay for like 6 months and then never looking at it again. And like all it's just like being all over the place. I'm like, oh, all of these different art forms are actually, you know, involved heavily in a movie and in film, and like realizing how much that's meant to me. It hasn't just been like entertainment, like it's been like a real like life-changing or like a deeper, you know, experience in my life. So I definitely, you know, it was helpful. I think I took a Muse storytelling course too, and it was the science of storytelling, which to be honest, it really wasn't the science of storytelling. Like it was kind of it was kind of falsely,
Really?
like it was not falsely
Put
advertised,
them on
but like,
blast.
no, like I highly recommend it for any filmmaker, writer, storyteller. Like it was amazing, but they didn't go into the science of story. They went into,
Yeah, that's a big title to live up to.
I was like, oh man, I'm gonna learn like what neurons fire off during like certain parts of like, it was like more like how to properly tell a story. So,
Okay.
which I guess makes sense sort of, but I was thinking it was something else.
Structure and like what makes a story, and
Yeah, and
you were thinking like the mind aspect of why.
I just
like
thought
the
it was
psychological.
I thought I was some science. Huh? Like I thought.
There were no test tubes.
Yeah. Like where are the lab coats? No, so it was still really, really cool. And it was also cool that it was like a whole kind of online community when we're all kind of shut away, and they went really overboard to make it like, you know, this big kind of production, and they were really energized. And it's like the owners of Muse Storytelling in Oregon, which are amazing, you know, video company. But they paired you with random people around the world, and you did like video calls and got to know them and tried to sort of interview them, and like did this whole process. And part of it was sort of like understanding your own individual why, like why are you doing this? And so I had to basically break that down for myself. And it was kind of like depressing because I was like, I don't know anymore. You know, I was like, I don't have an answer to this. But then I started peeling back the layers and realizing like, oh, like telling, yeah, like you were saying, like telling your own stories or like telling other people's stories that you're really passionate about or interested in that would interest you. Putting that out there is important. Like for me, I realized like telling stories that are sort of based on imaginary worlds that I have in my head, kind of that's what drives me. It's like always been what drives me for some reason, like wanting to kind of go somewhere that I've been going in my imagination all my life and show what that is like to people, which is something I still haven't really ever done, but it's sort of like that's my motivation. And it was helpful to like go through that. And I was like, oh, that's kind of encouraging. Like all these things that I've been sort of dabbling in kind of build up to something, you know, and that, I don't know, it gave me a lot more energy. And I was at a time where I was sort of like also going through a breakup, also like just being like, life is meaningless and just kind of like, I came out of that with a lot of like energy and clarity, which was helpful. So that was like part of the discussions of us doing our own why stories is like, oh, that was helpful. We should do this, you know, like, it's something we were already talking about, like the Votary brand story, but you know, it's cool that we're going down that road. But anyway, that was kind of my sort of version of that.
It's interesting with the why story interviews, asking like, what is your personal why? It puts you in a more reflective mindset. So you may not even know exactly what your whys are, or like you said, Mark, like a lot of people are not very self-aware or self-reflective. So even asking those questions kind of triggers a lot of asking yourself those questions, and maybe the first interview of like, what are your personal whys is not very accurate to yourself.
Yeah.
But it takes, you know, that discussing and kind of just like sitting and processing your own thoughts, but really having someone ask you that first, and then you can kind of come back and be like, and decide on some things. You know, a lot of things are just like under the surface, but you don't really know.
No, it's true. Yeah. And like sometimes you just have to process externally. Some people are more, I think, out like internal processors, and I'm kind of like I come up with conclusions as I talk.
Right.
I like formulate opinions as I talk. So sometimes I say things and 5 minutes later I'm like, I don't mean that because I'm externally processing. But I think that is really helpful.
But there's something therapeutic about people asking you questions.
Yeah, I think so.
Because you won't ask yourself the same questions that someone else will ask you.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyways,
Yeah. Well,
collective.
Collective, yeah.
Well, I mean, do you guys have sort of examples of that, of like moments like what Mark asked? That was sort of what came to mind for me. I've had many more of those sort of, they call them aha moments. Aha! Has anyone actually done that? Besides like cartoon characters? I've got it!
By Jove, I want to tell a story.
I don't think I've ever had like a eureka moment in my life.
Yeah.
Definitely never
Wish
said
I could.
eureka.
It's usually not a aha moment. So they go,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you had moments?
Try this pill.
But the question is like having a moment where
aha moments.
you're thinking about like why you tell stories.
Yeah.
I've definitely, like, little things I can think of is just moments where I've made even just like little short pieces of like a highlight thing or like a little thing that I put together, just like a memory of an event or like a time that I shared with people, or like, for instance, I made a little film about my actually during the pandemic, my niece was born, and we went down to spend time with my sister and her husband. And when they got back from the hospital, and I just filmed little moments of like that first couple days with her back at home, and just creating a little something like that, even though it's like just very low bar, like no production value, just like capturing moments. And then you show it to like your family and they like cry. And I even I shared it online, and I was talking with someone in my church who was like, oh, I watched, like, she's not connected with, like, she only knows me. She's not connected with my family or like my sister at all. She's like, I was crying, like watching that. I was like, I'm always just so surprised by like the power of just like little moments, even just like simply capturing it, editing together a little montage, and people, especially who are somehow directly related to it, are moved by it and cherish it. So there have definitely been times on my journey of storytelling and filmmaking where I'm like, I get so caught up in just like creating stuff I don't want to, or I'm just like lose sight of that original passion. And then having a little moment where something I wouldn't expect would have an impact, like move someone, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's why I'm in it. Or yeah, I'm always just surprised by how much value people can have for stories that we make and films and stuff.
So for you, it's more about like what keeps you going, I guess, is like the feeling, the emotion that you can like make your audience like emotional. You can like make them cry or laugh, whatever. Is that like for you? Would you say like what?
Yeah,
pushes you?
the emotion that you can give to other people. Yeah, I wouldn't say that's all of it necessarily, but it's definitely a big part of it.
Sure.
But it's probably still more exploring and reflecting that I need to do.
Love it.
There's something kind of cool too when you show something you make to people who are not in the industry at all, because like they appreciate it on a whole different level.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like so much of the time we're like showing it to like friends or each other, like what we make.
Yeah.
and it's just like, yeah, it was really good. So like this very specific technical moment, like I like it took me out of it like for like a millisecond. So like maybe if you just had the, you know, like, but people who they don't know what goes into it. It's just like, you know, it kind of
feel it or don't.
Well, exactly, and it can sometimes put me back in that remembering what it felt like to watch a movie when you didn't know
when all
how
of the
movies were made,
was...
and you're just like, oh, like it just you can.
Yeah.
That's why I love watching movies that I watched when I was a kid, because it's just like, oh man, I remember what it felt like to watch this when I was a kid, and now it feels so different. And it's like that cool double. Thing happening. But
we show a movie like your grandma or something. She's like, how'd you do that? It was pretty easy, but
well, that's definitely
it's pretty easy, but like I could never explain it to you. You wouldn't get it.
Well, that's definitely what one of the things I value in the collective, because that's like we're kind of talking about today, is like, you know, for me, it's not good enough to just show a film or project, something I created, to people outside of the industry, because they will typically give you very generic feedback. They may just say like, oh, that looks good. They may give you like one tweak, but they just are so mesmerized by it. But it really, like, if you want to, I think, really improve in this craft, you need to show it to like other professionals or other peers, because then they'll be able to make the more detailed, specific notes for you in order to improve.
Yeah, I can tell that's a huge thing for you. Like, I think you've asked me to watch more things of yours than like anyone else who besides the people who work with me full time, which I'm like, I think is a good thing. You're like so open to some sort of constructive criticism, and I'm someone who I feel sometimes like, oh no, like because I'm like very blunt and honest. I'm like, I'll tell you what I think. If I don't like it, I'll tell you.
I welcome that.
I know.
You can't really hide it.
It's a good. I know. I like wear my emotions of like, it's good. You know?
But you're also very encouraging, you know, when you do give feedback.
Yeah.
So
that's good to hear.
Yeah, I don't think it's all just.
No, I don't think I've ever been like straight up like negative. Like, well, this is just bad. But
maybe you should tap into that.
This part here, just garbage.
Probably just best to delete it.
How long
Trash
did you work
it.
on this? How much time did you waste? No, but that's like a good quality, because people get real, especially people close to you. People get real defensive about what they're working on. I do too. Sometimes, you know, especially in the process, like writing a song or something. If someone like hears something I'm writing, like I'm in a band, and like if the guys in the band are starting to give me feedback while I'm like figuring out a riff or something, I like want to slap them. I'm just messing around. Like I'm not presenting a finished thing. Right.
Can I riff?
Can't I riff? But Jamin, what about
Yeah,
you?
we didn't hear your story.
What about you? I mean, I know it very intimately.
Oh yeah. Stay tuned for my Y story.
Yeah. Been editing Jamin's
Coming
Y
out
story.
so soon.
I know like every mannerism that you do, like every little moment.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's great.
Well, I had a thought as you were talking, Luke, just kind of adding on to the whole emotion thing. And this isn't necessarily like why I'm a storyteller, but it is something that I think about a lot. And it's just like I guess the best word to describe it is like legacy, and leaving something behind and leaving memories behind, and even having things to show to like your children and descendants, like thinking in the future and looking at how maybe a piece of work that you make, as long as screens exist and the internet exists, I mean, there's going to be ways that those things will live on longer than I will. So I think about sometimes how like the things that I make will probably be watched by my great grandchildren.
Wow.
And that's something that's so unique because there has never been a generation before where there were like written stories that were passed down. And so like you'll have like stories from your great grandfather and older maybe about like what kind of person they were, but you never got to see them as like a young person, like visually in front of you, like on screen. And so I think about how, the things that I make about my family and my own life and the people closest to me, like will probably be watched by those people. And that's something that's so unique. Like it's, there's never been a generation that's gotten to experience that. So
That's so cool.
it'll be really fascinating to see and to pass things down. I mean, hopefully it's meaningful to them,
Yeah.
but
Well,
it's hard to know.
imagine being able to watch videos of your grandparents. Like you're right. Like we have photographs, like, and obviously films have existed for a while, but there's so much that went into that. Like just having casual, like silly phone videos, like
Yeah.
we're like the first generation to be able to like document our lives
Yeah.
in like just so easily.
Like daily
Like our grandkids are gonna go on our like
Snapchat.
Instagram like archives or something
Yeah.
and see
Oh,
our
geez.
stories,
Yeah.
all the stupid stuff.
But to them, it'll just feel like a normal way of just looking back. Like for us, like, can you imagine if like you had like uncovered like video of your grandparents? Like you'd be so amazed by it. Like, that would be so crazy to see.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
for them, it'll just be like, it's just a video of grandpa. Like I've got millions of other of these in the archive, So,
Yeah.
That's interesting though. Like, man.
So, but then I think that there's a challenge of curating things because like you'll have endless clips and little like daily things
Yeah.
captured on phones and whatever from our generation but then there's a matter of like what actually will last and what actually will be worth watching as a one of those great grandchildren. And so I think that beautiful docu edits and things of just like with music and things, I think that will live longer hopefully. And so that's like thinking about what you're sharing, Luke, with that little video of your niece.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's really cool, and it excites me, and that's something that makes me want to keep making things. That like I think I have a few projects that are similar to that mean that to me, and also mean something to my family members. So I don't know. That's one thing, but
Legacy.
You definitely, that's like right up your alley, man. Like you just in your spare time will put together those types of like in curating all of this B-roll for your Y story is like really amazing to watch, like the little home movie kind of pieces that you do, and it's like you just like to do that in your spare time. I'm like, that's
I have
pretty
way
unique.
too much footage that hasn't been there's
I'm sure, yeah.
hasn't been edited, and there's a few projects that I do want to edit. Like from my honeymoon, I have a ton of footage.
Yeah, but even for like freelance filmmakers and videographers, I think that's kind of unique to like take a memory and be like, how did that feel, and then attach like the feeling to it, and like then you watch it and you're like, oh, I feel like I experienced that.
Right.
It's cool.
Different than just like watching something at face value. You're kind of interpreting it for them a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's all storytelling essentially is
That's storytelling?
selection,
Oh my gosh.
selecting information.
I never
that
took
you
a class on
communicate.
the science of storytelling, so I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
It will be more like
I don't know what the
Zoom calls
composition
with
is.
strangers. And have you ever heard of conflict in the story? That
No,
they really harped on that too.
Oh, really?
No, it was really helpful. Honestly, it was like, oh my god, we never talk about that.
About conflict?
Well, like for like our work, we would never like go to a client initially and be like, yeah, but like what was like the worst part of the journey?
Yeah.
You know, what was the hardest thing? Like we maybe talk about challenges or problems that were solved, but you know, that's something that's now been, I think, a regular thing for us. And like, yeah, taking that class, I was like, oh,
That's what makes it a meaningful story.
That's because then if you don't talk about that, you don't have the resolution.
Story arc.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
There definitely is something to be said about a formula for stories. I mean, you don't necessarily have to follow this.
I know.
Quote
It was
unquote
a hard pill
science.
for me to swallow for a long time. I was just like, no,
I wanted to free flow.
no
It's
structure.
so free, the restriction is freeing though.
It is.
It is.
Hey,
Yeah.
that sounds backwards. I don't understand.
I know. Creative limitation.
That's paradoxical.
So yeah, like you can sort of learn that lesson when you look at so many films that you love or something, where you find out like, oh my gosh, like the reason they did it that way is because they had like no money or because
Yeah.
of whatever, and it's like they had to get. It forces you to get creative.
Yeah. And you definitely see that, like, just historically, like, throughout across all religions and civilizations. If you think about it, they all kind of have the same story, more or less. The hero is usually descended from above and has to figure out his or her
like
purpose.
myths in religion. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's all the same kind of formula if you think about it. And they have to like fight the dragon or something, and by doing that, they're saving the virgin. And you know, then they kind of die, but they come back to life, and they're a bigger version of themselves. I mean, that's what it sounds like myth, but like there's nothing more real about that.
Story archetypes that Jordan Peterson talks about this
Yeah.
in depth in his new book, and it's like pretty fascinating. I recommend it.
I gotta pick up his new book.
Beyond Order.
Is that what it is? I actually didn't know he had a new book out. I gotta pick that up because I love his 12 Rules for Life thing.
No, it's excellent. It's just this one's a lot more like, okay, a couple of these chapters will be like very in depth with like studying like story archetypes and things like that and historical significance of like this kind, and it's really in depth. And then I'll like read that like paragraph by paragraph and like stop and like digest it and be like, wow. You know, and then there'll be chapters that are about like just autobiographical about his life, and I'll just whip through those and I'm just like, oh my gosh, and I'm like at the edge of my seat, and then he'll go back to like, and then like this is the significance of this thing, and you're just like, oh. It's like so heavy again. You're like, I'm like, this is so deep. And like, so I will go through phases of just like whipping through chapters and then just like feeling like, oh man, I gotta like pick that up again.
You
So
think
I
he's
actually
a natural born storyteller?
haven't finished it. I don't know if I think he's an excellent storyteller. I think he's a natural born
What if Jordan Peterson
intellectual.
worked on some fiction stuff?
That'd be so cool.
It probably would be incredible because he's such a perfectionist.
Right.
He said that with both books that he rewrote it like 50 times because
Oh my
every
gosh.
single sentence that he's saying, he wanted to distill it down to make sure he was saying the clearest and most precise way to say every moment
Yeah.
of it within every sentence and like every point that he's making. So it's not necessarily like he's trying to make it like, oh, it's really like flowery or very specific or like the largest vocabulary he can. It's like supposed to be the most clear and articulate, but because he's just like he is so smart, it just ends up being kind of like,
I bet he has a hard time writing emails.
yeah, right. and then you
Probably
read back
delegates
over it and you're just like, wait, you know.
One of my favorite things about Jordan Peterson is how like he'll so eloquently and intelligently say like how worthless you are. Like, like I follow him on Instagram, and I saw like yesterday, a way to start my week off right. It was like a quote thing. It was just like, they say you're good the way you are. No, you're not. And I'm like, but this is so true that you need to constantly improve yourself.
I love the point he's making that like the modern sort of accept yourself exactly who you are. Like there's a place for that, and that's like can be encouraging, but it also is like, wait, so you're not going to work towards anything and better yourself?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like he's
Totally.
like, imagine who you could be and then go
Yeah.
towards that. It's like, that's so much more powerful than just like, you're perfect. Just just how you. It's like what?
And I
Like,
think we're more afraid of what we can be as opposed to like what we can't be. Like it's
Yeah.
scary to think about like you being like, if you were to be a filmmaker that's on the same level, if not higher than Alfred Hitchcock, like be the greatest filmmaker in the world, like that's
Higher?
intimidating. Or just changing your body and like getting in crazy shape. Like if you're not like already in shape, already, that's crazy to think.
The self-care and culture and the like you're perfect the way you are is kind of more of it's a response to I think the overworked like culture or like just put your head down in the like self-hatred type of thing that a lot of people I think struggle with. So in that regard it's like it's totally valid and I think it's important, but it's like if you just only stay there then it's just like you're not like telling yourself like the truth or trying to like have a goal anymore. It's like that's too bad. But yeah, I saw that post too and I was just like
Happy Monday.
relevant.
Start the week off right.
Monday.
I mean
I'm encouraged by that though.
Me too. I
know?
see that. I mean, for one, for maybe a hot second, I feel like really down about myself because it's like, he's really hitting it home. I feel, I maybe just, I'm getting complacent. I need to like get my act together. But then it sort of motivates me.
Yeah.
I think another problem too, there's this other book, Atomic Habits. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. It's a really good book. I mean, it's in that kind of self-help category, but there's some real substance to it. And one thing I took out of that was like, if you're trying to improve yourself, but you're not, it's like maybe you need to change how you identify yourself. Like, say you are overweight and you're struggling to exercise or get your diet right. It's like, well, it's probably because you're identifying as an unhealthy person. If you identified yourself as an athlete, you would find it much easier to get into those habits and the sort of system of like, get your running sneakers on first thing in the morning.
Yeah, the mental barriers.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Those are hard.
Yeah.
It's like not an easy thing to just be like, oh yeah, I'm an athlete.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
a
very
lot
hard.
of I mean we have so many mental habits per day that are like hard to nail down, and then the more times we tell ourselves a certain story, the harder it is to sort of counteract that. And like some of it, I don't even think we realize we're doing it. It's like that's why people go to therapy,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or just like have real relationship with where they can like talk about that stuff. It's like I think that's like we were saying about conversation earlier. It's like that's part of the value. It's like like piecing together something you might not have like processed. Yeah, definitely.
But I struggle with all those things for sure. I mean,
Mental habits, bad habits.
Yeah, because sometimes I and Jamin will pick on me for this because I talk down about myself all the time. A lot of times it is just to be funny, but like it's true though. Like you shouldn't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah,
and,
Jamin.
like- but
Hide now.
but no, you're right though. You shouldn't be so hard on yourself because then eventually you'll kind of talk yourself into. You'll think like you are subpar or mediocre or what have you. But if you
Sorry.
No, you're fine. But if you were to just pick yourself up and identify yourself as someone who is a very talented filmmaker, a hard worker, all these positive things, then you'll start to emulate that over time. But
Yeah,
that's so
or you
hard.
can like acknowledge that there are areas that you need to grow and improve.
Totally.
It's not like a denial of your shortcomings. It's just saying I'm working on this, or I'm like becoming better. I'm getting better.
Like where's the balance of like recognizing your shortcomings and not beating yourself up mentally in a way that's just like totally self-deprecating,
right?
But then also recognizing that it's not that you want it to change, and it's okay to want it to change. That you're not like, which I don't know. That's the kind of weird balance where it's like because like I feel like that we're in a culture now that it's just like. You're fine. You don't need to change anything.
Sometimes, people are not willing or maybe aren't given the permission to point out or say things that need to change in an honest, loving way.
Yeah, and I do think for some people maybe you're like this. Like the first step is sort of the self-deprecation.
Yeah,
and it's sort of like as long as you don't stay there.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because if you just stay there, it's just like, that's not going to be healthy.
I mean, that's my problem. I mean, I still look at myself as like just that kid who like, before the pandemic, didn't know where he was going, and I still am hard on myself with like my films. And I think that's part of the reason why I go to you for like feedback and stuff, because I still have it in my head that I'm like, average. But that's not, there's good and bad to that, like you're saying. And I need to find that balance.
Yeah.
I need to recognize that I am talented, I am extraordinary, and I'm like working my way to getting there, but just recognizing those flaws, but only recognizing them and not like letting them get to my head, I guess, if that makes sense.
Fixating on.
Yeah, fixating. Yeah. So.
Well, like you were kind of saying before, Mike, there's kind of truth on both sides, and it's like this paradox kind of thing. Because I think where the self-help, like love yourself, people get it right is that you have intrinsic value, and that your work doesn't define you or make you more or less valuable.
Yeah.
But
who you are in your core.
But your work, what you do, what you work towards, comes out of a place of already having value, already having worth, and because you're not trying to earn like respect or try to earn like value in any way, like you're working towards something from that place rather than towards that place.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, like because you could literally identify yourself into what you put out. And I think that's why it's difficult for some people to like share some sort of passion project or something they're working on, or like an art project or anything. It's like it's never good. It's never because their identity's wrapped up in it. Like I've heard that like, like if you were to like show us a video and then just be like, oh, I'm such an idiot. Like it's now about you and it's not about the project. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's like that's like, whoa, no. Like, you know what I mean? Like
That's true.
which is like, I think, like what you're saying, like it's not about, but that's hard for people.
Yeah, because good critique can only be given when there's like a mutual understanding that like what I say about this is separate from what I'm saying about you. Like, I already love you as a friend, and I already think you're like talented and you're working towards something, but I'm going to critique this because I think you could improve here and here. And you have to have that view of yourself almost like, I can be really hard on myself, but that without jeopardizing my core like identity.
Yeah.
It's especially hard if you really like identify as like a musician or a filmmaker or something. And it's just like so much a part of you that it's like, here, I'm going to show this to the world. And people are like, I don't like that at all. It's like, you don't like me?
There has to be like a separation in a way. But like paradoxically, I think people who have made that separation, who don't see their worth, it's like completely wrapped up in their work and what they produce, they end up producing better work for it because it's coming out of a place of excitement rather than pressure
and confidence.
It's not like if I don't make this great, then people won't like me and I won't be good enough and blah, blah, blah. But and so that kind of pressure weighs you down. But if you're like, okay, I'm already like set, I already have people love me, whatever, and now from that I can make something that I really want to make.
Well, just to advocate for the devil,
I love that.
Like some people are motivated by that. Some people are motivated by.
Some people are motivated by pain.
Well,
sure. It's not
like,
that you can't
it's not
be
good enough, and everyone's gonna see it, and they're gonna hate me, and it's like I gotta make it.
Well, it's not that that's not a motivator. It's that it's actually
probably not
lesser.
It's probably not a sustainable motivator.
Not a sustainable one,
healthy.
and it's actually less. Like it'll serve you less in your purposes.
Totally. You'll have imposter syndrome.
I don't know if I've ever created out of like love though.
You never made a breakup song?
That's not creating out of love. That's creating.
No,
like when I feel motivated is when I'm like in a dark place, and then I'm like, I'm gonna make so much stuff.
Dude, same.
But you're like kind of grappling with what you're going through.
Yeah, and because then stuff is just pouring out. Like when I'm in a good place, I'm just like,
that's
I
like
really feel like playing guitar, like writing. I'm just like,
I'm good.
I feel good. Let's go take a walk, and I don't do anything about it. I don't think like, all this like lovely music is coming into flooding through my head. It's like I don't know. It's weird. It's hard to have that balance of something.
Something good about that though. I don't know how that fits into it. But.
There's definitely something to be said about adversity though, like good being made out of that. I mean, there's something I saw recently. It was like, what was it? It was like bad times create good men or strong men. Strong men create
Good times.
Yeah, and good times create weak people. Weak people create bad times. It's kind of like, and it's like a cycle sort of thing.
Oh no. So where are we?
Good time, bad time.
Well, I'm having a pretty good time right now.
Oh no! What are we gonna create? Because we're having a good time.
I mean, it doesn't need to be taken literally, but I mean,
Yeah.
in the sense that, I think we all do kind of need to go through. It doesn't need to be like hell, but some sort of adversity. Maybe you lost your job. I mean, that's a bad thing, but it's not as bad as like having your family massacred or your home burned down. Like,
Whoa.
I'm just
Well, yeah. There's always that. That'll certainly create some adversity in someone's lives.
Yeah.
Well, why are they so loud?
I don't know.
Anyway,
Wait. Let's talk about it.
Oh, okay. Stop. Oh, it's the train.
Oh, yeah.
I was hearing like them talking and then the train, and I was like, "What's happening?"
Yeah, it's a lot.
Anyway,
yeah.
cut that out. I had a thought, and then the
Me
train
too. I'm
had-
trying to-
Oh,
Some
God.
about a home getting burned down, your family getting axe murdered.
Oh, that, yeah. So adversity. Well, because like you know, kind of more about your character and like those around you through the dark times. Like, have you ever had like a friend, or like travel with someone, and you like love being around them every other time, and then all of a sudden you like travel or you do something that's like somewhat not comfortable or something, and you just see the side of them that you're just like like really like something didn't go exactly your way,
Yeah.
and now it's like the end of the world or something. You're just like, oh, because things got a tiny bit hard or uncomfortable, it's like you fall apart. And then you realize like, oh no, that's like who they really are. And then you don't want to like judge them for that experience, but like then you experience that yourself, and you're like, oh, I'm experiencing something that's really difficult. The way I react to this is like going to dictate a lot for me, especially after your sort of initial reaction, because I tend to have sort of like deer in the headlights and then have to like process. Or I have like a really bad negative reaction when I hit adversity, and then I reflect on that and backpedal. and they're like, I didn't mean anything.
Like, I'll change that.
Like, yeah, no, I didn't mean anything I said. But yeah, it's like who we are. I think in that sort of your deepest pain is like part of like what carries you through.
Yeah, and I think that I'm trying to like think about and reflect on that, why pain or difficulty and conflict create good storytelling and good like creative outlet. And I think that it is, a lot of times it's a processing, like it's a way of not just coping, but actually getting through it and working through a difficulty.
Yeah. Well, because it's like, it's the real life, like we're talking about story structure before, it's the real thing that's like happening to you in your life. The reason that story structure is so established and people have been telling stories in the 3-act structure like that throughout all time is because it reflects reality.
Yeah.
And when you go through it yourself, that's the way that you express it. Like, all story starts with an ordinary world and then some kind of conflict, a villain comes, and there's heroes call to action, there's a death, rebirth, and then there's a new world that's established after that. So when we ourselves are in our ordinary world and then it's upturned by some conflict, some villain of some kind, then we naturally start to process the events of our life and get into the storyteller mode and try to see ourselves in that story.
Yeah. This is sounding like some story acceleration. I could really use a good book on this right now.
Wow, if only someone had really thought in depth about these things and could help us process through it.
If only someone that
Fly,
knew.
available in stores near you. By Denmark.
No, it's true though. Like,
Available now.
Yeah, like
Must be
you're
18 years old or
you're basically while you're hearing a story or watching a movie or anything, you're like asking yourself like, what would I do in that situation?
Yeah,
Like you almost
that's-
want to
yeah.
you want to believe that you would do like what the noble protagonist would do or
Yeah.
whatever, and like
That's literally like a hidden life. When I watch it, I can't remember if you've seen it or not, or we've talked about it.
oh, I want to the Terrence Malick film.
Yeah, Terrence Malick film, but it's about this.
Oh, it's like 3 hours
dissenter.
long. So every time I go to watch it, I'm like, yeah, it's 3 hours long.
Yeah,
I'm
but it's a
tired.
World War II film. This guy's like not giving in to Hitler, essentially.
I know what it is. I don't want to know
You,
about it.
you can't spoil it. Like the
But
main
that's
story.
already like I want to just go into.
Oh,
it.
okay.
I just
Wait,
what
wanna-
are you
all
talking about?
I just want to
But
go in
it's
blind.
one of those movies you watch it and it's like this. It's World War II. It's like historical. You're like you immediately put yourself into that situation. Like, oh, what would I do if I was in this guy's shoes? So
Yeah.
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 Oh my.
What are there? I know that that's like a huge one for you. Are there? And I think I know some movies that you've seen or stories you've heard that have meant a lot to you. Like, I'm curious with you, Mark. Like, are there stories or movies where you were like, oh man, like there's a character here that I like want to sort of emulate?
Definitely. I mean, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly comes to mind. Just that whole trilogy, Clint Eastwood. I'm very
The
attracted.
nameless badass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very attracted to the strong silent type. That like. I've always kind of wanted to emulate that as well. Like for some reason, I kind of like someone that's very like slick and, doesn't really show emotion and for some reason has like
No
the
emotion.
coolest- has like the coolest kind of like one-liners. The
Yes.
person that they don't say much, but when they do say something, there's like a lot of depth to it.
Yeah.
Like people like that. Also, I don't know, just people with like a certain charisma, like an odd kind of charisma to them. I'm trying to think of an example if I can go way back to like certain movies. I mean, there's definitely a lot of villains I love. Like
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of an example. I can't really think.
I think you're missing the point of the stories here, Mark. You're
mean-
identifying with the wrong people.
No, I relate to that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but like
Because they almost allow you to like play out a scenario of like, oh, what if I just said like screw it, and like,
Yeah.
but and that can be helpful.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, I mean like take the I talked to you a lot about like certain like Rob Zombie movies.
Yeah.
And like, if anyone's seen like The Devil's Rejects or like that whole trilogy, like it's literally the main characters are serial killers, but you can't help but like love them to an extent because they're like they have like such a human, almost like they got like a lot of sense of humor. They're very like funny. They're like there's just something about them that we can kind of like relate to.
Yeah.
It's messed up to think about because they're murderers, but like
Yeah.
he does a very good job of like putting that human element in there and. Just like anything from like the dialogue to like certain like interests that they have, if they like ice cream, things like that, little elements. Oh,
Yeah.
I just Sopranos, like Tony Soprano. I love Tony Soprano. I love him.
Yeah.
Like you can't really help but like relate to him in a lot of ways because like, sure he's a mobster, but he's got a family. I mean, he's like, for good or for bad, he's trying to like build a life for his family, for both families.
Yeah.
And he's steering the ship the best way he can, that he can think of. So I always like when they do that, when the lines between hero and villain are kind of blurry,
Yeah. Flawed protagonists are powerful because
Yeah.
it helps you identify what's wrong within yourself, and that's ultimately like necessary for life. If you're constantly only identifying with just like only the good guy, and the good guy is just so pure, it's almost just like can be like, oh,
It's a lot to live up to.
yeah. Well, you can sort of distract yourself from just like, well, what do I, what sort of evil am I gonna bring into the world that I almost want to work through and deal with? And when you see a character that's sort of like working through that, it's like therapeutic.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I don't know why I have nothing to really relate to Tony Soprano about.
Well, you're
in
Italian.
I guess. Well, yeah, there's a lot of that where it felt right at home, where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is literally like my grandparents' house growing up. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, you do relate to him. It's like he's just. I mean, part of that is James Gandolfini too. I think he's like he was one of the best.
Up without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just knew how to play every moment where you're just like you're so dialed in. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
We should probably talk about that Sopranos movie when we see it.
We definitely
Whether
should.
we see it separately or together, we got to talk about that.
Yeah,
Do you guys know about that? It's like a Sopranos prequel.
No.
Have you guys haven't seen that show though?
No.
No.
greatest show on television.
We're not Italian.
Oh, come on.
I don't
have
watch
to be
Italian things. I'm not Italian.
To close out, any movie or show recommendations?
The Sopranos.
There's one I just watched on Netflix, Barbarians. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
No.
It's really good. I've been on kind of a real history kick lately, and it's about it's in like what is it 9 AD. It's about the Germanic tribes and
Wow, sounds
the
kinda
Roman
dope.
Empire. Yeah, it's about like a war. It's
Dude, that's my type of people. The
Germans?
the Celts, and
Yeah.
Celts aren't German.
no, I know,
Yeah.
but I'm just talking about the barbarians and
Yeah.
that early
Yeah, of course.
So
civilized.
Yeah,
it takes place in 9 AD.
yeah. It's that like time. Period
Anyone
when
that fought the Romans, basically. I'm on board.
I'm down with.
Yeah.
yeah,
Who
like
were Italians?
when like
No. Oh, right. The Romans.
the
were-
Romans are Italians.
Yeah,
You know what?
Yeah, no, it's like when the Roman Empire is like trying to work their way into the Germany area, and it's actually, I mean, it's partially true. I mean, it's about like what was his name? Arminius, I think. He was a Roman commander who was actually a Germanic-born like tribe member, but he was raised by the Romans, and now he's more or less kind of fighting and trying to conquer his own people. So it's a real internal struggle.
Is it just one season?
Yeah, it's only 6 episodes, but I
Okay.
would highly recommend it. I mean, it's all in Latin and German. Which
That's cool.
I like that.
Feels like you're
Wow,
more,
that's
more
amazing. I've
yeah.
never seen a
There's-
show in Latin.
There's nothing worse than a historical show or movie where they're speaking English.
I know,
you're-
and
in
American
America,
English.
where it's like takes place, you know,
It's in a
somewhere
British
overseas.
accent.
Like
It's
War
okay.
Horse with Steven Spielberg.
So good.
Like it's French and German people, and they're all speaking English.
Yeah, it's just
Oh,
like,
they transition into like speaking French and German random times. But then when it's like important stuff, you need to know. They speak
yeah,
English really well.
I can't get down with
Is
that.
that? I don't even remember that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
I've been watching a bit of Dave, the show on.
Oh, is that good on Hulu?
Yeah,
It's good. It's
Lil
funny?
Dicky. Yeah,
Dave.
Little Dicky? What?
yeah, that's his rapper name.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's cool.
it's pretty funny, but it's also really well made, and it has some really good episodes.
Yeah, John O. loosely recommended that at one point, and then I never heard anything about it. I don't have Hulu, but I should check that out.
Nice.
I've been watching a little bit of I Think You Should Leave.
Dude, it's so
So
good. It's so good. I can't handle how good it is. Like sometimes I'm like sometimes I'm about to fall asleep and I'll just think of one skit and I'll be like, oh, I need to find it. And I like watch it on my phone and I'm just be like crying. There's just something about that show. I just I can't handle it. They say coffin flops, not a show. when he's in the big suit. I can't do it, dude. It's too funny. You're saying you don't want to live anymore because you're wearing that suit? Yeah.
I haven't seen that one.
You haven't seen that? I think I showed it to you. No, I'll show it to you.
No, the coffin flops one. I did see that one.
No. The one where he's in the suit and he's like, it's like the fake like punked show, and he's gonna
I've
like,
seen it.
he's gonna. It's so stupid. Just play a little clip of it. Whoever's editing this, like, it's so people know. Yeah, watch. I
So
think you
people
should.
know.
I think you should leave on Netflix. Is one of the weirdest,
It's so
Dry-
easy to watch. Too. It's
driest,
just like
most
just put it on.
ridiculous comedies, and I've watched it multiple times.
What's this called now again?
I think you should leave.
That's right. Okay. I honestly like I thought Jamin was being funny, just saying like I think you should leave, Mike. I thought.
Well, I do
didn't
think
realize-
that, but
We should leave.
I'll check that out.
Well, after Fallon recommended Squid Game to me like 4
Oh, yeah,
times,
yeah,
I
yeah.
watched Squid Game. That was good.
I gotta watch that.
It's fun.
no, I gotta watch that.
I like
I gotta watch that.
miniseries
Okay.
a lot. I've been finding like some good miniseries. I started one yesterday that I watched 4 episodes of. They're like an hour each.
Which one?
000.
Oh yeah,
I mentioned that. Yeah,
Sounds familiar.
that's also a miniseries on Amazon. It's about cocaine dealing worldwide. And apparently it's written by a guy who was pretty intimately like studying this stuff. He was a journalist, and so it's supposed to be pretty accurate to how this stuff goes down. And it's pretty nuts. It's cool. And beautifully shot, like really beautiful.
That's nice.
And it's also terrifying.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great. You'd really like it. There's basically the main theme is, well, it's sort of like Pulp Fiction, how there's all these different stories and they intersect kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the main people are Italian mobsters, but it like not in the like traditional sense, as like real deal, like in the mountains of Italy kind of thing, and it's really shot there too.
Oh, that's so
I don't know.
cool.
Tom Segura talks about it on his podcast.
Oh, really?
And he's the one who put that like front of mind. Like no one else I knew in real life talked about it. I'm like,
wow.
oh, Tom Segura likes this. I'm like, for some reason, I'll give it the time of day. But he like goes on and on about it on his podcast, and I'm like, man, he really likes this. But they talk about how the budget for the show must be crazy because they're shooting on location in like Africa and Mexico and Italy, and they're bouncing all over the place, and it's just like, what?
Wow.
It just feels like Mission Impossible. Like you're just like jumping on all these locations, and yeah, it's good.
It's a 000. It's on Netflix.
It's like spelled out
00
on Amazon.
Oh, okay. On Amazon. Okay.
Yeah, and it's just 8 episodes. But I literally was like, oh, let's see what the first episode's like while I'm eating dinner, and then all of a sudden it's like 11 p.m. I'm like, whoa, I guess I should go to bed. Like it like sucked me in for sure.
That's super cool. I'll check that out.
Yeah.
Please no more show recommendations.
All right. I don't know if this is a thing we're gonna start doing. I thought it would be fun to start doing.
Well, it's just
Show
annoying because
recommendations at the
everyone's
end.
like, you should watch Queen's Gambit. And I'm like, okay. And then
But watch all these
I watched
other
it an
shows
hour,
first.
or, I mean, a year later, and then there's more, and it's like Squid Game out. I'm like, okay, now I have to watch Squid Game.
No, you gotta watch The Sopranos.
There's a new Tiger King that's gonna come out apparently.
A new Tiger
God.
King?
Yeah, I think
No.
so. Season 2.
Oh gosh.
What else is there to say?
Yeah, I thought that story was done.
I don't know.
Oh, I
don't know. I didn't make it.
So excited. I hate Tiger King. I
Oh, thank God. I
loathe-
thought you were saying you liked it. I was like,
No, I
yeah.
loathed every moment, but I'm gonna watch it. It's like I don't know the emotion that I have when about that show.
Yeah.
It like drives me insane.
I guess I didn't hate the show. I just hated the hype about it. Like, I
It was
don't know.
annoying how many people were recommending it.
Yeah, I was like, come on.
The memes were good, though.
They were funny memes.
They were funny memes.
I mean,
funny memes.
It pulled me in.
Yeah.
But anyway, all right.
Cool.
Thanks for jumping on and Voter Collective. And if you are, a filmmaker or
Maybe
reach out to us.
Next time, we
What?
should have another Votary Collective episode where we talk about the Votary Collective for real.
Yeah.
I thought we did a little bit.
No, we didn't.
No.
A brief,
not at
brief
all.
introduction.
We
No,
said
we
the
didn't.
collective is. Wait a second.
We
What's
didn't even define it.
And then you went into.
You can go on our website and scroll down and see "Are you a filmmaker?" and click on that, and you can, put your work in front of us, and we can reach out to you. And
We'll say.
that's the sort of vetting process, and we have events, and
We'll say what's up.
we
Become
didn't really talk about it a lot. You're right.
become a voterite.
Oh my God,
I just
trademark.
No.
no, that's not gonna happen.
We're not doing that.
Votarian.
Votarian. Yeah.
I think we should keep going.
No, we should.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Though.
I feel like
really appreciate it.
we're in a flow right now.
Of course.
Yeah,
fun.
happy to be on. Yeah.
Yeah,
If you ever,
it was fun.
if you ever want me to come on again and spoil the show, let me know. I'm happy to.
All right.
No show spoiling here, Mark.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.